And welcome to a truly spaced out edition of the Oddity Archive. This show designed for the lunar ticks in us all. And today's episode's going to be a bit of a head trip. And I think I've already filled my pun quota. But as I said, this is going to be kind of a head trip of an episode. It's going to be kind of almost a theater of the mind kind of thing, and a bit of a stream of consciousness thing too. So what I've got for you here is a stack of reel-to-reel audio tapes, all of which pertain to the space race, which of course mostly took place during the 1960s, and all of these tapes are from the 60s. So this episode's going to be kind of an anomaly within the realm of Oddity Archive. Certainly an anomaly in that I think this is the only time that I've found not just enough of a like subject, but all on the same format, and that create kind of a narrative and just fit together, and I can make a whole episode out of it. So it's going to be an oddity of an oddity. But anyway, let me just talk about this for a few minutes before I get started. So, about a year and a half ago, I was on good old Fleabay just looking for some cheap media, because there's always going to be a bunch of duds anyway. But I found this lot of 4 reel-to-reel tapes, and if the labeling was correct, which it turned out to be, these were all of coverage of space race events, and that could very well mean not just off-air footage, so to speak, but quite possibly the only surviving copies of some of this stuff. So, having said that, these tapes were in really rough-looking shape. But at the same time, nobody was bidding on it, probably because of the condition of those tapes. But they looked just promising enough to me that I just couldn't bear to see these things possibly go to the landfill. So just as a bit of insurance, I placed that minimum 99-cent bid on these tapes, and lo and behold, I won. So these tapes, 3 out of the 4 had the worst kind of shed you can have, and that is dry shed. And that's where the oxide just kind of peels right off the tape and leaves you with clear plastic. You can't really bake or treat that stuff. So I kind of had to change my usual methods here. So normally I'll take 2 passes at this when it's reel-to-reel or record rip-offs or whatever. And it'll be one just strictly audio pass, and then one with the camcorder showing the gear going and all, so you can have something to watch when I do the episode. But these tapes looked kind of fragile enough that I didn't even try that initial pass. So what I did was I just went ahead, set up the camcorder, brought in the lights, and just let it do its thing, and just kind of whatever happened, happened. And so you might notice that if you're a reel-to-reel geek, that the settings on the machine might not always look quite right compared to what you're hearing. Well, those are the ones where I had to strip off the pertinent channel of audio after the fact. And that was just because I wasn't thinking I was going to get a second pass at it. And you might even notice, if you got a big enough screen, that you might see the occasional little piece flake off. So I truly think I got the last pass at some of this stuff. Now, for the most part, I'm actually going to be backing off for the bulk of today's episode. I'm just going to kind of be here to fill things in terms of context. So to get things started here finally, I've got what actually amounts to 3 out of the 4 tapes of this lot. And what we got here is effectively the entire Friendship 7 mission. Get it? The Friendship. Yeah. Where's Norm Macdonald when you need him? So anyway, this took place on February 20th, 1962. and I was able to save the first and last tapes of this set. This goes on for about 6 hours if I actually could have saved all 3 tapes. But the footage does exist in other permutations, so I wasn't too sad about it. And the guy that recorded this was just militant about cutting out station IDs and stuff, unfortunately. But anyway, so we've got the first reel, which has the launch and the first orbit, and then the last tape, which has the last part of the third/final orbit, and then the landing in the ocean, and then coming up onto a ship to be saved and all. Now, of course, if you're familiar with this, you know that the astronaut of the day was John Glenn. Unfortunately, whoever recorded this also decided to stop recording just maybe about 2 or 3 minutes before John Glenn came out of the capsule and addressed everybody. And so, this guy isn't exactly in my high list. But, it was a very long time ago, so what can I say? But there is one very amusing bit out of these tapes, and that is he'd been sitting on these tapes, the guy that recorded them, for almost 3 years. So the Friendship 7 stuff is from 1962, but at the beginning of the first tape, we have a rehearsal for a deposition on a traffic accident lawsuit from 1959. So we'll present it in that order. We'll give you some of the deposition, and we'll get into the Friendship 7 stuff here.
Whether there were skid marks on the road or not pertaining to the accident, this I do not know, because another accident preceded us by about 10 minutes, and there were skid marks all over the place. Now, I am positive I stopped and he hit me on my side. This I am positive of. As he came through the crosswalk, he slowed down. He came to the center of the line and he slowed down instead of stopping. I assumed that Mr. Parnell was going to stop at the time. Then I've got 25 feet away from Mr. Parnell, and he precisely turned into me, at which time I slammed on my brakes, and Mr. Parnell's car hit me on the left side, throwing me back, at which time I hit my knee and chest against the steering wheel. My head was thrown back, and I felt a sharp, intense pain in the neck and back, a dizziness for a while, and nauseousness, at which this disappeared in a matter of seconds. At that time, I did not tell this to the policeman because I didn't realize how serious it was. I'll scratch that out, not seriousness. I didn't know the condition that was. I was taking treatment from him. I went up there the 26th, and then practically every day for the next 5 days. I think I missed 1 day, and then after that, every other day, I was taking traction and physical therapy and wet packs home in the house with traction as recommended by my doctor. I went up to him for a total time, I think, between 20 and 30 times, at the end of which time he released me. The condition I am in now, I am feeling fine. So ends my great report. Now remember it at the end of the week. Be up to Mr. Nathan's at 2 o'clock Tuesday. That's 2 p.m. Tuesday for deposition. Roger Wilco and out.
The Mercury spacecraft umbilical is out. We're at T-minus 19 seconds. T-minus 10 seconds counting. 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Ignition. Liftoff. The MA6 vehicle
target so far. Looks like a good flight. Oh, go, baby.
MA6 vehicle is still climbing nicely.
NOAA has the capsule in sight, is the only thing we got.
The NOAA has the capsule in sight.
45 miles from the Randolph.
It is now 55 miles from the Randolph, and we will make This is Mercury Control. The USS NOAA reports the spacecraft is on the water and is now attempting to make voice contact with the pilot.
Which would take us
Landing time is estimated at 2:43 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
maybe an hour. In other words, this was it looked like a shot that was considerably short than originally planned. I'm talking to the gunnery officer here.
My trusty assistant, Mr. Sokolow, informed me.
This is Mercury
It
Control.
now comes to
Reports
three.
from the USS NOAA indicate the Friendship 7 spacecraft was picked up clear of the water at 1 minute after 3 and finally set down on the deck at 4 minutes after 3 this afternoon, Eastern Standard Time. John Glenn reports, my condition is excellent. They are in the process now of opening up the spacecraft to remove John Glenn from the spacecraft. This is Mercury Control. The spacecraft has
And
been
that's
set
the
on
wonderful
deck
and-
of the USS NOAA.
That's the wonderful and happy news, and there is that happy crowd in Grand Central in New York, and they couldn't be any happier than the thousands of workers here at Cape Canaveral and across the entire United States, as we learn that great news that John Glenn is safe aboard the destroyer NOAA, and they're waiting to remove him from the capsule, and he says that he is in excellent shape. Those were some rather long moments of waiting, I'd say. This is Muskingum College Auditorium. Listen to the applause for Glenn Hay. That's the town where he was born, where he grew up, where the mayor says they're going to have the darndest parade you ever saw when he comes over. Oh, boy. Big step forward. Deke Slate.
Mercury Control.
Here's an announcement.
Astronaut John Glenn is in voice communications with the USS NOAA. He has just advised the people on board the NOAA that he will assist in removing a small pressure bulkhead so that he can crawl up through the narrow upper neck of the spacecraft. This is Mercury Control.
On July 10th, 1962, the Telstar satellite, or Telstar 1 as it's retroactively become known, was launched into orbit. And of course, Telstar was famous for being the first satellite to, operative word, transmit video, audio, scanned still images, and also handle phone calls. And so that evening, they did the first round of tests, one of each 4 targets. And at the very least, ABC did a special report on it. And as I said, at the very least, I can't find any evidence that CBS or NBC did. But anyway, here's where things start going a little haywire. It was 1962. There was no home video yet. And to the best of my research, nobody thought this important enough to try and record and by turns save. So to the best of my research, the only otherwise surviving test from this round would have been the video test. And even that is not direct. So the control center was at the Andover Earth Station in Andover, Maine, and the Universal Newsreel cameras were there that day, that night rather, and they had one of their cameras pointed at a TV at a bit of a distance, and you can see the flag outside of the building, which is what was broadcast, just flapping away in the wind. But otherwise, that might be it. And here's where my tape comes in. Well, we've got at least an audio description of the flag, but that's secured, I guess you could say. But this might be it for the audio test, which is of the Star-Spangled Banner. this might be it for the phone call. And as far as the scanned image, they did a slow scan, low res image. They say it right here. We don't think it's good enough for broadcast, so we're not even going to try. So obviously that one is kind of lost to time, but yeah, it's a good thing I was able to pull this one, huh?
The ABC television network and its affiliated stations interrupts its regular programming tonight to bring you a special report on the first world communications satellite. Here is Arthur Van Horn in New York.
Good evening. In just a few moments, you may be in on history in the making. The first operational test of Telstar, the satellite sent into orbit only this morning. The operation is an historic effort to relay television, radio, and telephone programs through space. The dramatic venture is sponsored by the American Telephone and Telegraph Company. Bell Laboratories built the satellite and purchased the launching rocket from the government. The satellite appears to be functioning perfectly through the fifth orbit.
Scientists of Bell Telephone Laboratories have labored for 3 years on Telstar. They blasted out this main hillside, free from radio interference in a basin surrounded by mountains. They built the giant horn antenna and the control center to test out Telstar. Then AT&T paid the Space Administration $3 million to hurl Telstar into orbit with a Thor Delta rocket. And finally today it all began to happen when Telstar got into orbit, a perfect orbit.
Now, Telstar's first musical transmission, which will be followed by the first picture from outer space.
Gene, we're approaching the time now where we want to transmit that photo. Incidentally, that telephoto, do you know what the picture is?
No, I don't.
Well, the wire services, the press services have selected the news picture of the day, and the news picture of the day is Telstar. And we're going to try to transmit that very shortly. Is there anything that you would like to say, Gene, by way of conclusion before we go off the air? What about that France report that you've just had?
We hear that the picture is coming in very clear. The words were that it looked as if it were coming from 20 miles away. The sound is loud and clear, and it's been perfect ever since they first got it, Joe. I'm very happy to say about that. I would like to take 1 minute just to say to you fellows that it takes hundreds of people to put a performance like this on, to build this station, and I can't thank them all personally, but they know how I feel about it. Now I think we better go to our facsimile transmission, Joe.
Thank you, Gene.
Here in the ABC studios in New York, we will not bring you the facsimile transmission at the present time, since it is not particularly suited to television. It is a transmission of but a few lines per second, which over a period of time build up a picture. Therefore, it is not of television standards.
What peoples are doing all over this world, I think it will be a great tour de force for good if used properly. And that's what's challenging for us. We must use it properly, and I'm sure we will.
Thank you, James Haggerty. And with those words, we leave you. Telstar, a future before us. Let's make it work, and work for the future welfare of all mankind. Art Van Horn, ABC, New York.
This program has been a presentation of the News Department of the American Broadcasting Company.
Now, this was recorded by the same person that recorded the Friendship 7 tapes. And this person recorded over some existing material to make way for the Telstar stuff. So once the Telstar coverage ends, we jerk back to the existing stuff. And it starts off with, and we're going to pull away from the space stuff for this segment. We have a fragment of a field recording, I guess you could call it that, of somebody kind of sort of trying to sing along to a country record. And I'll play as much of that as YouTube will allow. And after that, that's where it really starts getting interesting. So once we get past that little fragment, we've got a real good chunk of an episode of Pontiac Star Theater, which aired over ABC at the time, from November 14th, 1960. And this was truly a special episode of Pontiac Star Theater because, if as best as I can gather, it kind of bounced back and forth between variety show and stuff like filmed stage plays. But this time, it's what is believed to be the first time that TV was used to promote a feature film with any real significance anyway. Bear in mind, TV and the movie studios didn't get along too great at first. So this time around, it was a 1-hour promo for John Wayne's The Alamo. And it was shot seemingly entirely on set. And from what I've read, this may or may not be true, but it was allegedly the first thing that was recorded completely on videotape on location. Now, this is not lost media. UCLA has the master quadruplex tape of this thing. It's just that it hasn't seen the light of day since it first aired. So I'm kind of half re-premiering this one here. But anyway, my recording is kind of unique still, in that you would think this would be an off-air recording, but it's a needle drop. So I've looked around and I can't find any evidence that this episode of Pontiac Star Theater was ever released as a record, but either this is a needle drop of an extremely rare promotional record, or somebody had the means of cutting their own records.
Did you ever hear tell of sweet Betsy from Pike, who crossed the wide prairie for her lover I, with two young cattle and one spotted hog, all sang high rooster and the yellow dog.
And putting before the young people as well as the old the sentiments of the Alamo and its history.
One more thing. What do you contribute to your longevity?
My?
Yes, sir. How do you explain it?
Well,
just like a sleeping giant sprawling in the sun. In one great hand, the Rio Grande, the giant land I. Boston and Houston and Alamo, El Paso, Crystal City, Waco. Hello, cousins. My name is Chill Wills. They call me the ambassador from Texas to these United States of ours. I was born on July the 18th, the hottest day in the record of the state. Each one a lovely Valentine. Here's to ladies, I love ladies. Oh, always may all were mine. May all were mine. May all were mine.
There's just one more tape to cover here, and this is the one tape that was not from the Fleabay lot. So this one was actually part of a lot that was sent to me by a viewer not too terribly long ago, and most of the tapes were just total duds, but the one keeper just so happened to be footage from the Apollo 11 moon landing, and operative word landing, so none of the moon walk, which happened later that night, but July of 1969. And you're probably thinking, oh great, I mean that's not really rare. I mean, I can go on YouTube or archive.org or a few places and watch this stuff. Great, Ben, you're gonna just play audio. Well, this is a radio air check, and there aren't quite as many of those. And this one is kind of unique. So this one is from WCBS FM in New York City. And what they were doing was they were simulcasting WCBS AM's coverage, because the AM station was the news radio station and FM was music. And they were doing it completely in-house. So there's no Walter Cronkite here. This is just the local regular radio guys trying to get through this. And so it has a very different flavor to it. And better yet, this hour's worth of footage has no cuts. So we have all the station IDs, and they still try and do commercials a few times. So what I'm going to do here is I'll still play some of the famous parts, but it'll be more about the local people trying to do their thing, and also how they pull out of and back into their coverage. So I'll play you some of the commercials as well. Now, at 5 p.m., the WCBS FM version decided to pull the plug on the simulcast and just go back to their regular music for a while. And this was a rather unique period for WCBS FM. If you know them, you probably think rock and roll oldies. Well, before that, they were an underground album rock kind of station. But before that, they tried to be kind of their own format. And what I've got is maybe about 10 minutes worth of the tail end, very tail end of that period. And so during this period, they were calling themselves the Young Sound, which seemed to be a mix of what they used to call the beautiful music format, which was mostly easy listening instrumental stuff. And there was some more middle-of-the-road adult pop on the Young Sound, and a few show tunes. Now, there is one bit of DJ patter that survived in this clip, but for some reason it gets really choppy. I think it might have been a battery-powered tape deck and it was starting to go. And so I've left all that in. I do want to try and give you at least a taste of what that format was like, obviously with very little of the music for copyright reasons. And I have mixed feelings about it. It's interesting, but it makes me kind of long to hear what they were like as an album rock station.
High gain pitch 212 yaw.
I got a message for every woman and every man.
Arm defense.
30 seconds.
They're going to fly along heads down for a long period of time, and they'll be able to see the lunar landscape slipping beneath them. But then there will become a time when they must yaw, in their reference terms, and they'll be heads up, and they won't be able to see what's going on.
46,000 feet, continuing to descend.
30 seconds. Forward.
Kicking up a little dust as they were 40 feet above the surface.
Contact light.
Contact light.
Okay, engine stop.
Stop the
AK
engine.
at a descent. Mode control both auto, descent engine command override off. Engine arm off. 413 is in.
They're on the moon.
We copy you down, Eagle. Listen, Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed. Roger, Tranquility. We copy you on the ground. You got a bunch of guys about to turn blue. We're breathing again. Thanks a lot. Thank you.
Do you believe it?
You're looking good here.
The flight of Apollo 11, now the lunar landing of Apollo 11 coverage will continue in a minute.
Does today's gasoline really give better mileage than what we had in the old days?
That's a question for Shell's Answer Man. Here's his answer.
It sure does. For example, 1 gallon of today's Super Shell, blended with platformate and other mileage ingredients, helps the modern engine deliver about 50% better mileage than a gallon of our 1930 formula. 50% better mileage. Next question, please.
I know you get worse gasoline mileage at high speeds than at low ones, but why? Because the carburetor is wide open or what?
The main reason high-speed driving really eats up gasoline is wind resistance. For instance, a standard sedan may have to put out over 4 times more horsepower to fight the headwind created at 80 miles per hour than it does at 40. Naturally, when you have to put out that kind of power, you must sacrifice mileage. So to get even better mileage from Super Shell, don't buck the headwind created by high speeds. Keep your speed down.
Thank you. The Answer Man is brought to you by Super Shell. Super Shell, the good mileage gasoline.
17 minutes and 42 seconds after 4 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time on the date of July the 20th, 1969. That was the landing time. And they'll begin a simulated countdown now, preparing for the possibility of a takeoff at any time. They'll get everything lined up should they have to take off at any time. And we'll pause for this.
Take a moment to look around you at your friends and neighbors. Perhaps you've noticed more people than ever before are enjoying the better things of life, enjoying them at an earlier age, too. How? One reason is that they have learned to use credit wisely, to borrow when the need arises. In fact, more than 1 million people each year ask GAC Finance for money when they need it. And GAC does a lot more than just lend money. You get sound advice on budget planning, intelligent, understanding help, and the peace of mind that goes with knowing your financial affairs are in order. The amount that GAC Finance can lend varies from state to state. In Florida, loans are up to $600, while in California, the maximum is $5,000. Check the yellow pages under Loans for your state's limit and the address of your nearest GAC office. Because the wise use of credit takes the waiting out of living. People who want better things to happen now, ask GAC.
And we're continuing now with the lunar stay of Apollo 11, which now has the call sign Tranquility, as it sits up there in the southwest corner of the Sea of Tranquility on the moon, and the lunar landing has been safely accomplished. We'll continue, but now let's pause. 10 seconds for station identification.
CBS in New York. This is WCBS FM News Radio 88 and WCBS AM, where you can hear complete coverage of the Apollo 11 moon mission.
And this is Reed Collins along with Stephen Rowan in the CBS News Space Headquarters in New York, where we're listening to the voices of men, American men, I should say, who are on the moon.
In that time, I wonder if our colleague Alexander Kendrick has had time to collect his thoughts. Alex has been a CBS News correspondent since many, many years ago and has covered many of the great events in history, but Alex, surely there can be nothing like this one.
No, Steve, as they would say in the trade, it's a great dateline. Tranquility Base. It does bring to mind, though, a lot of the other explorations, discoveries through history, ships and voyagers arriving at out-of-the-way places, Hillary arriving at the top of Mount Everest, Columbus arriving at San Domingo, the ship, whatever it was, arriving at Botany Bay, Lindbergh arriving at Le Bourget, Peary at the North Pole, Amundsen at the South Pole. But I don't think there ever was a thrill like that of Eagle arriving at Tranquility Base, if only because we listened to every stage, every phase of the arrival. Think what it would have done to our maps.
Alex, I have to remind you that Columbus had a boat. He could turn around and go back. And I've also been reminded that we have a ship of duty here that we must row a bit, so we'll pause for this.
The whole world's closely following 3 men right now, our Apollo 11 astronauts, the most famous travelers the world has known. But I'd like to call your attention to some everyday travelers we often take for granted. They're the men driving America's 16 million trucks. It takes that many trucks to haul America's needs, because trucks haul 2/3 of all the food we eat, plus getting gasoline to our service stations, newsprint to our newspapers, and even Saturn rockets to our launch pads. You name it, they truck it. And these drivers have a safety record that's the best in the nation, rolled up while driving over 190 billion miles a year. That's about the distance of 400,000 round trips to the moon. Impressive? The people at B.F. Goodrich think so. As a member of the ATA Foundation, the American trucking industry, we're pleased to salute these thousands of travelers who safely deliver the goods.
Well, this is the lunar stay of the flight of Apollo 11.
That seems to have obviated the necessity for any further maneuvers. Now everything seems to be going smoothly. Perhaps we can take this moment while everything is going smoothly to pause for this message.
Sherwin-Williams Chem One Coat Premium House Paint is one of the world's great cover-ups. Now, we didn't call it Chem One Coat because it sounds good. We called it that because it will cover any color with just one coat. Green, red, brown, even black. It protects your house with a brilliant white finish that will stay white and fresh-looking long after other houses have been repainted. It costs more than other house paints, but it's the most inexpensive house paint you can buy. You save all the cost and bother of putting on 2 coats because Chem One Coat covers with just 1 coat. We guarantee that in writing on each can, or you get enough paint to ensure satisfactory coverage. Chem One Coat Premium House Paint. Another of the easy-does-it paints you can trust from Sherwin-Williams. The people who cover the earth.
Stands on the sea of tranquility of the moon at 1 minute before the hour.
CBS in New York, WCBS FM and WCBS AM News Radio 88.
On the Young Sound from WCBS FM. The Sunshine Company singing I Just Want to Be Your Friend. Tony Hatch with Beautiful in the Rain. And the Supremes in their hit Nothing But Heartaches. Then the 18th century Connie Carr singing So Much in Love with You. And finally, George Martin's Only Love.
Listen.
I hear society moan, but if they could see...
Now, before you start asking, yes, I will post the space race stuff to archive.org for your perusal. And if you're good, I might post some of the other stuff there as well. But otherwise, that is it for today's archive. Join us next time for some probably not so cosmic debris.
Hello, Red. This is the last of the tape. I don't have no more. If you'll get me a reel about 2,000 feet, I can put both records on both sides. That's about all. I'm cutting out a tape. Jerry.